Good morning, friends, here and live streaming. I'm Nancy Reinert. I had the privilege, when I lived in the Rochester, New York area, of becoming acquainted with a young man named Salva Dut, who was a refugee from South Sudan. And I'm here to talk to you today about his water projects and the plight of water scarcity and cleanliness globally, and to share some of my stories. So I'll do some storytelling and some fact naming, and we'll go from there. Isaiah is kind of my theme for God's promise regarding resources. Waters will spring up in the desert and streams in the wilderness. The burning sand will become a pool, and the thirsty ground fountains of water. That's the promise, but what we've learned is it takes human management for that to happen. This handout, Greg, they're on the music stand behind you, is a production from the United Nations, who in 2016 launched this goal of sustainable development, 17 goals to be accomplished by 2030. The sixth of those 17 is water, clean water and sanitation. The most recent report on this project is that progress is insufficient, and if things continue as they are now in terms of the progress, by 2030, 4 years from now, 2 billion people will still lack safely managed drinking water. Safely managed being defined as from an improved source, readily available, on the premises, and free from contamination. 3 billion will still be without managed sanitation, and 1.4 billion without basic hygiene services. Now, think about what our lives would be like without being able to turn on a tap and get clean, safe water that we can trust won't make us sick, that we don't have to walk hours to collect from muddy sources. It affects everything. It affects health, it affects food security, poverty. Inequality always creates its own frictions among peoples. It's a humanitarian right that we have a mandate to provide for all human beings. Now, I want to be clear that I represent Water for South Sudan because they're the organization I know. There are lots of fine organizations out there doing water management projects. One of the well-known ones is called the Water Project. You can check it out online. Hershey High Key Club supports, and they do a walk for water every year at the high school, the Thirst Project, which is a student organization really geared toward high school students getting involved. So there are lots of ways to attack this getting out there. This is Salva Dut. I met Salva in 2004. I was serving a church near Rochester, New York, and he was a recent refugee from Sudan who had been settled in Rochester. And I was looking for someone to speak to the church. We were doing a refugee theme, and Salva was recommended to me, and I've admired the man incredibly ever since. He had been on his own hero's journey. At the age of 11, he was in school one day. It was the middle of Sudan's second civil war. His village was raided, and the teachers said, run, just run east and keep running. And it turned out there were, as they gathered, 17,000 boys who became known as the Walking Boys or the Lost Boys, who ended up in refugee camps in Ethiopia. Salva was there for 5 years and then led another group of boys from there, he was now a teenager, to a UN refugee camp in Kenya, where he was for almost 6 years, before, by the grace of God, his name appeared on a list of people being moved to the United States. 50 of these boys settled in Rochester. In 2002, he'd been here 5 or 6 years, assuming his whole family was dead, as they assumed he was. He got word that his father was in a UN hospital, 300 miles from home. He had walked to get to this hospital, but he was very seriously ill from waterborne diseases. Salva was determined to see his father. He thought this might be the last chance to connect with him, and the Episcopalian Church, of which he was a member, helped him get back to visit his father. And when he saw the plight of the village and what it had done, the water had done to his father, he was determined that his home village was going to get clean water. And that was the inception of the idea of water for South Sudan. While he was here, he became a US citizen. He studied international business, and by 2005 was drilling his first well in his home village in Sudan. And that's the year I was invited to join the board for Water for South Sudan, which really began my journey with them. Just to orient you a little bit, South Sudan, bordered by Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, the Republic of the Congo, Central Republic of Africa, and Sudan. Now this all started when South Sudan had not yet gained independence, and Sudanese civil war had been a constant since about 1956. Most of the natural resources that are of any value are located in South Sudan, oil being the major one, lots of other minerals there too. But you can tell South Sudan is landlocked, so anything they need to export has to go through Sudan to the Sudan port here on the Red Sea. It was in 2005 that a comprehensive peace agreement was reached between Sudan and the future South Sudan. And in 2011, South Sudan declared its independence, and at that point, Salva moved back to Africa to live there. So this is South Sudan. The capital is Juba in the province of Juba. Bahr al-Ghazal is the main area in which Water for South Sudan works. Tonj is Salva's home. Wau is where the headquarters is, the compound that exists there to serve the area. The Nile River works its way north all the way up through the eastern part of South Sudan. So the Nile is not much of a resource for this part of the country. Western South Sudan was visited by Episcopalian missionaries, so most of Western South Sudan is Episcopalian. The Presbyterians went to the eastern side. South Sudan is about 60% Christian, and other and smaller percentages of other religions and tribal religions, whereas North Sudan is primarily Muslim. So the rubbing points between them were both religious and then resource oriented. When we traveled to Sudan, the board decided, as they were starting this whole process, they wanted to get eyes on the ground. They wanted ambassadors to be in South Sudan to see the water well drilling process, and to be interpreters when we got home. So 5 of us went, representing the board. This was our kind of first sight of the savanna of Bahr al-Ghazal. Savannas have wet and dry seasons. So the dry season is about December to May, which is when they can drill. By the time the wet season comes, the equipment's too heavy to plod through the mud. But the wet season establishes enough lakes and natural ponds and so forth that most years people can kind of subsist but get through. The typical homes, they're called tukels or huts, made out of either grasses or mud walls, and then a thatched kind of roof. This was our arrival at the airstrip where we were quite the entertainment for the day because the villagers gathered to see who's coming in on today's plane. And when 5 white people got off, they were fairly surprised. Most of them had never seen a white person. They brought their animals and their bikes and were very curious about our cameras, loved seeing themselves on our digital cameras because many of them had never seen their own face. Because even the water is too muddy to give them a reflection of what they look like. And one boy would be saying to the other, "Oh, yeah, that's you. That's what you look like." And then we boarded, Salva met us there, and we boarded the Range Rover, and this was the road. We traveled for about 6 hours to get to the village of Abelnyang. On the way, we stopped to, Salva wanted us to see firsthand one of the traditional wells. There were a couple boys there to gather water from this well. They use jerry cans, or you can see kind of a USA can of some kind there to lower in to dredge up this contaminated water. They also have animals who have to have water. Mostly water gathering is women's work. This is a very traditional look, a dried out gourd used as a water vessel. It's typical for women to walk 4 hours a day for water, perhaps as much as 6 miles one way, and to make 2 trips with, water weighs a pound a pint, right? And whatever that is on your head. I was telling some folks earlier that they laughed at us when we tried to do that. They said, "You're not built for this. You are just not meant to do this." And that is literally true. This was our welcome to the village of Abelnyang. Chanting and singing and stomping of their walking sticks. It was really a joyful thing. Salva had been there. They knew in general what was going to happen, but it was still kind of a foreign concept to them. And so he again is explaining what the process will be about this well being drilled. That is what was the school in Abelnyang. Again, a typical hoot. You can see just the flame inside that would be kept burning all the time for their cooking. A proud homeowner and a less than stable home. I don't know if you can see in the ground the X. The villagers had a job. The chiefs get together from a region and determine what the priority will be for which village is going to get a well. And then the villagers decide where would be the right place to drill that well in terms of the geography of their little village area, but also where the trees are, because that's a good indicator of where the water is. So they had cleared the area, X marks the spot, and that's where the drilling would begin. The next day, the supplies arrived. The pipes to drill, and the PVC, what lines the well itself, the wellhead, and some interested young little boys. This is a typical water source. To drill a well, you need water, because water lubricates the drilling process as it goes lower and lower into the ground. So huge, big rubber bladders, I forget how much they carry, a ton of water or something, are loaded in trucks and filled from a source like this, and then brought back and poured into pits that the villagers have dug to feed the pump that will keep lubricating as it works. You need gravel. The ladies' job was to collect the gravel. They went off, collect stones wherever they could. This woman, whose name I do not know, just attracted our attention. And when she put her rocks on the ground, Angelique and I picked it up just to get an estimate. Our estimate was that bag weighed 50 pounds. And she threw it up on top of her head like it was nothing. And again, laughed when we even tried to pick it up. So the women gathered the rocks. The men then, with whatever tool they have available, crushed the rocks into smaller gravel. And that gravel was put down in the bottom of the borehole to act as a filtration system, but also kind of destabilize the pipe. This is the water that's being flushed through the drilling system and brought up And you can see the man picking up mud. They continue to do this through the drilling process. We're going down about 300 feet is the average to this aquifer. It's a huge aquifer. And they keep track of what the mud looks like. And the trained workers know when it's getting close to the aquifer by what the mud looks like. I need to tell you that I think one of the most important parts of Water for South Sudan's work is the fact that it is local teams who are trained to do this work. And when a village gets a well, the village appoints 2 villagers who become the managers of the well, who are trained on repairs, who are responsible for the security of the well, when the well is dug and Water for South Sudan leaves, the well belongs to the villagers. And they're responsible for it. They are left with some basic parts to make the repairs so that it becomes a self-sustaining thing and a source of real pride for the community. This is the Women's Association. They've been off visiting another village. You know, it was probably a presbytery meeting, diocese meeting, I don't know. But they came back singing and dancing to welcome us and to bless the drilling of the well. She's the president of the Women's Association. And their drummer accompanied them, so they had a rhythm to hold. And we finally got to the aquifer and it was time to flush the whole system, and this is what came up first, kind of like yours now, Jack. And the villagers were very anticipatory. The concept that there was water underneath them all this time was just astounding. One man brought his fishing pole because he thought if there was water, there must be fish and he could catch a fish. And finally, it runs clear. There was dancing and jubilation. And then the well was capped, and a little ceremonial moment. This particular well was paid for by my congregation. So every time a well is drilled, they recognize and thank the donors who made that possible. Just a fun story. One of the things we took with us were these beach balls painted or printed like a globe. And this is Ben Dobbin, an AP journalist, doing a little geography lesson. And the boys just laughed at him because all they know is flat. They cannot conceive of a spherical world. And so the lesson kind of failed for that moment. We also took soccer shirts from some of the Rochester youth soccer clubs that had donated them, and the boys were so proud to have new shirts. And then the soccer ball. One game they knew for sure. Salva took us to visit the village of Aliak, probably 10 miles away, where a well had been dug 2 years before. He wanted us to see what happens after a well is dug. And there it is at work. The villagers waiting their turn. And the animals. Skinny animals. One of the things that had happened was a village or a marketplace had sprung up because, for one thing, women weren't spending all their time walking for water. They could now stay home and be a little more entrepreneurial. Here are grasses dried for building materials, a shop, a little restaurant, Nancy buying some tea at a little grocery store, men playing a variation of Mancala. The other thing that happened was they could now make bricks because they had water. And they built a school. 4 classrooms, services about 400 children. proud students. The idea that they had a real school was a big, big deal for them. I didn't say English is the official language. There are other tribal languages spoken, but the children are do school in English. You can see a math lesson on the board. They also study Christian education, science, and reading. Salva again. And then we went to visit Salva's home village to meet his father on the far right, who's accompanied by a cousin. But this was the man that inspired this whole project and is now healthy and well and the chief of his village. Very proud man. And just some of the faces. This man is a Dinka. Two main tribes are the Dinka in the west and the Nuer in the east. These are Dinka markings that he would have received when he became a man at the age of, 12, puberty. Salva is Dinka. He was not marked. You'll notice the dust on the faces. That's intentional because it helps keep the flies away. Now, the things that have happened since I left Rochester, water and hygiene projects. In 2014, the organization decided it doesn't do a lot of good to give people water if you don't tell them how to handle it responsibly. Washing hands was a foreign concept. Soap, foreign concept. No concept of germs and how they're transmitted. So teams were trained and sent out, and as is the philosophy for Water for South Sudan, in each village, 4 men and 4 women were trained in basic hygiene practices. And they were left with soap and nail clippers and some other supplies to help people really take care of themselves. And then I'll get to the latrines in a minute. In 2017, rehab teams were established. The wells had been in long enough that they decided it was time to go back and do some major repairs, and in some cases redesigns of them. This says 59 wells. On your handout, they've now rehabbed 455 of the wells. They've drilled a total to date of 634 wells that get water to something over 500,000 people. And then the latrine program was established in 2018. So what a gift to a community, to a school, to have this kind of hygiene and sanitation management. I'm going to leave this now and go to the website. I want you to see pictures I don't otherwise have. The other thing Water for South Sudan is now doing is water storage. So they build these water storage units above ground using solar power. They can pump the water into them. And then gravity pulls the water down and distributes it through underground pipes that have been laid that then are distributed a few around a village. This is the grand opening of one. To kiosks where there are taps for the water. That's a huge improvement, to be able to store the water for one thing, but then not have to pump it physically. It's a much more efficient way of distributing the water. In the 22 years that Water for South Sudan has been in operation, they have raised $20 million from foundations, from private citizens, a lot from schools who do projects, from grant money. There's no government money that funds Water for South Sudan, in Sudan or from the United States or anywhere else. Some other things have happened. lots of, you'll see on this sheet, sorry for those of you who are streaming and don't have the handouts, but the other organizations, Water for South, yours is in black and white, I'm sorry. The other organizations that partner with Water for South Sudan, they have done projects for the UN. They have been asked to come into Sudan to do the WASH project, the hygiene, which is WASH is water, sanitation, and hygiene, at the refugee camps that are still in Sudan that house Sudanese refugees in their own country. So they have become quite respected for the work they do. I'm going to stop for a minute and ask what your questions are.
Did you have to, as a visitor, could you drink the water?
Oh, no.
Oh,
no.
So what did you have to do in places?
Salva had arranged to have water trucked in for us. We had, packs and packs of bottled water. Mm-hmm. And then the kids had a great time collecting the empty bottles. Mm-hmm. And that's what they would use to gather their dirty water to drink.
Yeah.
No, we couldn't touch it.
You noted that the schools they taught English. I was before you said that, I was wondering, is there a language barrier there or not?
A lot of the people still speak their tribal language. Mm-hmm. They seem to understand English mm-hmm. a bit. But yeah, I would say you get outside a village and you're going to run into some barriers because of the tribal nature of things. Mm-hmm. I have a video I'm going to show if you don't have any questions at the moment.
My name is Salva Dut, and since 2005 you've been supporting us to make a great impact in this community of South Sudan. You all know the well that will be put out make a great changes in your life, and the new well also are going to make a great changes. We all know that without water, no human life, and we do it just for the love of water. The first time that we drilled the well here, the life was not good, it was terrible. Look at you. You should be proud of you all with what you did. You have garden here, a small garden. You have beautiful market here. Also you have church. And we have the school there as well. The well we're going to drill is to give to other brothers and sisters who are neighbors who don't have well. Who is going to do the development is all of us together. If you are given a well, you need to take care of it. So when we come back, we need to see the well is doing its own purpose. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Some distance to come and collect water from here because we are very far away from this well. Kids are alone at home while you are here fetching water. I'm requesting from Water for South Sudan and the donors to give us more the difficulties that we are facing is the lack of water. Even some people are very interested to make a garden, but we have no enough water. We have so many villages that come and collect water from this well. And if you guys came here from Water for South Sudan, we are asking you to give us more wells. Today I'm hoping that your coming will bring more development to this area.
especially when you bring water, we will have some more garden around.
They have given me the independence. Unfortunately, this year, the hand pump is only one. There's a lot of people coming here to take a lot of water, so she doesn't get that much time to irrigate all those plants that she's planting. Oh, well, she couldn't make it to have this garden with all those greens. She sell them, she get the benefit from it, she let her kids go to school. That's the impact that it happened from this well. He did plant the mango trees and then lemon, and he sell them also. He said so he sold them, he get 100,000 South Sudanese pounds from this.
About $700.
This hand pump that drilled by water for South Sudan. He has used 100,000 because his kids were sick by malaria, and then he took them to the hospital, and then he paid for the medicines. I did ask him how long you want to do this, and he said, well, I actually want to do it for the rest of my life.
This is the result of the well that we drilled. How he is able to plant this tobacco, to sell it, in order for him to support his family.
Today is a playground for building construction, and they are looking really forward for members to come here and see their community and see what they brought in their life.
Community are very glad to receive a team coming to establish the water.
In Winti village, the community has prospered. As you can see behind me here, there is a church. A few years ago when we came to drill this well, there was nothing at all. But people are so eager to develop their area. In terms of sickness, did this borehole help the community?
Yes.
How about hygiene, the people hygiene?
Yes.
And I hope the school is helping the community to teach people how to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And what do you do in this shop?
I'm selling some medication over here because people are in great need. There are two reasons why people get sick here. This area is close to swampy area, so the malaria is very common over here. And also people are not getting, especially the kids are not getting good food.
We are currently in Majongabok village, and this is the market for the village. As you can see here, we have different type of goods, and also is the gathering point for the young men. As you can see here, they are playing dominoes. This is the development that happened because of this well. The well is also helping the cows. As you can see, the small cows are drinking from here because they don't have to walk a long distance to go and get water. Lord, after the well was built, she started building her house, the concrete house, as you can see. And also because of the well, she managed to grow some mango trees. That is one of them right there. And she is also growing some vegetables around the well. Yes, she said after I finish building this house, I will think of what to do next because I want to do more. Today we are here with all our equipment to do the groundbreaking, and we are hoping that in a few days we will have the project completed.
Everybody show the example and say that you have good job. That's the chief of the village.
We are in an area where there is a lack of water, and I'm glad that we are getting water. I'm hoping that whatever you brought to this community will be sustainable.
She said she's really excited to have the water here, and now her world has been liberated. The water was a problem, but now the water is going to be just beautiful.
We are hoping that we are getting some more. Wherever we came from, we are hoping for more help. I know that God is protecting all of us from South Sudan and the community here. And I'm glad that all what the well did is very good because it's healthy development. That is why we have the schools and the church. What do you want to tell the donors who donated money?
Thank you. I want to thank them. I thank you very much.
I just want to give you thanks for what you have done, and I'm hoping that God will bring us together again and do some more. Thank you.
The commercial. Okay, any other questions? Jack?
How are they for health care? They mentioned there about having medicine available, but do they have doctors come by, or if they and they mentioned somebody had to go to the hospital, can they get to a hospital, or?
It's often a long, long walk. Doctors Without Borders is in the area, but not close to these outlying villages. Often people just die because the hospitals are too far away.
I was getting the impression with all this walking that the ladies do in particular that they would be subject to injury or that kind of thing.
I think other health maladies are more prevalent than injury just because they're so strong.
Like malaria, that kind of thing.
Yeah, malaria, all the waterborne diseases, guinea worms, that kind of thing. Animal injuries. There was one young man in Aboyang who lost his arm because of a snake bite. And Water for South Sudan was helping him train to be a teacher because he knew he'd never be able to do physical labor. So there are hyenas around, lions around. It's not a safe place.
How old would you say the average, how long do the men, for instance, generally live, would you say?
Life expectancy is between 40 and 50.
Is that right? Yeah.
They are, in terms of poverty and development, the next to the last on the UN list of developed nations.
Thank you.
Heidi?
So they were showing that the well allows them to have gardens, and so they can grow vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the well, what did they eat during the dry season?
Beans, rice, peanuts, squash.
Did they find them in the wild then, or did
no.
they have to try to buy them?
Again, they have water sources thanks to the wet season, but it takes carrying water, but only things that can grow with little water. Yeah, diet's terrible. So to add greens, to add any vegetable is a huge help toward health. Very little protein other than peanuts. Because the animals they use for milk and rather than meat, and once in a while for a very big occasion they'll slaughter a goat. for a celebration.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there was not much meat on them cows, so.
Yeah. One of the villagers came to our compound in Abignon to give us a goat for dinner one night, and Salva said to us, if it's okay with you, I'm going to give it to the team and let them have the meat. So we did that.
Do they have cisterns or anything to try to capture any of the water during the?
No.
Good question.
Yeah. Charlie?
One of the, I think, our misconceptions is that if you drill a well, it will provide clean water. The ground merely is a filter. And if there is too much available parasites to the ground, it just gets washed into the lower aquifer. And so the water coming out of a well is not inherently clean. And that's true here. East Hanover had problems with E. coli contamination of wells. That's certainly going to be their problem. I know that Living Waters for the World has tended to focus more on water purification and fewer wells than water purification, but you can't survive without water, so you need the well. There is also a project done by the UN in large part called the Sahel Project, which involves primarily Niger, which is kind of the same region, where ultimately anything you can do to slow the runoff from the wet season by having dams, pools, ponds, anything like that. The Sahel Project literally has people just digging small, goldfish ponds, if you will, in size, planting some trees and plants around them to help slow the descent of water into the aquifer. And in that project, they're claiming great strides in terms of increasing the amount of water available in the aquifer. But you basically got to stop the water from running off so fast. And so by doing these little goldfish ponds by everyone and everywhere, they're trying to establish a great green wall across Africa to capture that water and send it back into the aquifer so that you can actually drill a well and get something. Yeah. It's a horrible problem. I have no solutions. It's just out there, and it's complicated.
It is complicated, but how great that so many different organizations are going at this in different ways.
Yeah.
I don't know, live streamers, I'm sorry if you couldn't hear everything Charlie was saying, but basically the concern that you can't assume that just because it comes out of an aquifer, it's clean and safe.
Right.
I would think that there is an advantage when the aquifer is as deep as it is. We're talking 100 meters on average in Barrow Gazal. So that, the chance of contamination by runoff is probably less,
yes.
I would think.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, that's part of the hygiene project, is to help people keep the well area itself clean and the runoff from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a staggering problem. It really is. And different organizations going at it for different purposes and different perspectives is all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. But it's huge. It's huge.
I caught that they sell food to be able to buy things, but I'm imagining they get a lot of donations of clothes in particular. I mean, I saw one guy with a Cincinnati shirt on and things like that. What is the process for them being able to get donated clothes?
I'm not even sure about that. I was aware that people come through the village from larger towns. There are police officers who travel from village to village just to be sure everything's okay, proudly carrying their rifles. So there's some interconnection that happens. And again, they know they have a vision of what happens outside their own little villages. They know they are poor people. So there's enough connection to some more developed areas that I think those products flow through. And again, how many different organizations are at least dropping items there? I can't tell you. But yeah. And I noticed the women's beads. I know that there are women in Kenya who make beads and create jewelry out of the beads they make out of clay, for instance. So those come in, I think.
I saw one fellow with a designer shirt on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That someone threw away at some point.
It's,
probably.
well, it's nice that organizations might donate to something like that, you know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I toured Goodwill in Harrisburg years ago, and on a tour they told us that what they can't use in the area, and I don't know what part of Africa, but many of those donated pieces of clothing go to Africa, and then I don't know how they distribute it from that.
Well, good. Good to know. Anything else you're curious about? I have gifts for you. People who are live streaming, they will be in the library. What people here don't take. This book is called A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. She is a Newbery medalist and author of young adult books. She is the wife of Ben Dobbin, who was on the trip with us. He's an AP journalist based in Rochester. She got to know Salva and was as admiring of him as I continue to be. And she wrote his story. It's a well done story. It's two parallel stories. It's the story of Nya, a young girl, currently in Sudan, South Sudan, and her stories of walking for water and what a well and Salva coming to her village meant, in parallel with Salva's own life story. So it's a fascinating book. It has become part of the core curriculum in a lot of state curriculums for middle school. It has generated a lot of interest among students in Water for South Sudan and water safety in general. They estimate probably $2.5 million of donations to Water for South Sudan have come instigated by this book. So the office sent me copies to give to you all. Please take them, pass them on to a grandchild or another friend because it's really good reading and a good story. There are also some other handouts over there and bookmarks for you to take and enjoy. I encourage you to check out the Water for South Sudan website. A lot of good information and photographs and history and factual stuff there. So, thank you all for being here today and letting me tell my story.